Howdy, folks. This is your host, Khrayan,
And your host, Kissan Desai.
and thank you for tuning in to Oopscast, where we will give our predictions and analysis of NBA teams, players, and news.
And in the very first episode of Oopscast, we'll be covering the NBA 2020 mock draft. As you know, yesterday the NBA draft lottery happened, and we got the official picks 1 through 60. Today we're going to be covering the lottery picks. And if you guys didn't catch the lottery, we'll be going over all the teams, the players that we think they'll go with, and all like the weaknesses and pros and cons and their comparisons. And to tip things off, let's start with the Minnesota Timberwolves, the number one pick. First off, congratulations to the Timberwolves. You know, they're in the best position. Grant, what do you have to say?
We're going to go with what you said. Congratulations to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It's been an iffy season for them. It's an up and down season. It's an up season in the way where they got D'Angelo Russell and other great assets like Jared Culver also. It's been down though because they traded Andrew Wiggins and they just it hasn't been a good season for them. Anyways, when I look at this team, they're missing a power forward. They have the point guard, D'Lo, Jared Culver as a shooting guard, and they have Malik Beasley as a small forward, and they have Karl-Anthony Towns as center. They're missing that one vital piece, is that power forward position. And I feel like with this individual, Obadiah Toppin, they will become a prolific team. This young individual player has been a very explosive athlete in Dayton University, with averaging 20 points per game, 7.5 rebounds, and 2.2 assists per game. These numbers are showing that he's excelled to the level where he's proven that he could be a vital piece for almost all NBA teams throughout. And if there's two players that I can compare to him, it's John Collins and the All-Star Blake Griffin. Now, the reason why I compare these two players is not only the fact that they can score, but they can also play great defense. And how explosive they are. If you watch their videos closely of these three individuals, you can see how explosive they are, how much athleticism they have, and how much strength they have. For Obi, however, he needs to work on a couple categories to put himself on top. One is defense. Although he's a great offensive player, he still needs to work on his defense. And I feel like if the Minnesota Timberwolves can develop him to become a more better defensive player, the Minnesota Timberwolves starting lineup is going to crush everybody. And another thing is he needs to work on his strength. He needs to do conditioning, lift weights, he needs to do the basic fundamentals of, getting yourself in shape and making yourself a stronger individual. Kishan, you're the Minnesota Timberwolves, or in other words, you're Gerson Rosas. Who are you acquiring? Or who are you going to draft, in other words?
As the Minnesota Timberwolves, you got a lot of great players you could go with. But if I were the Minnesota Timberwolves, I'd take Anthony Edwards, with the number one pick from Georgia. This combo guard, yeah. So he's a combo guard. He's a very versatile player with fluid athleticism. He's like water, you know. He can just like go dash to dash on the court, and he can average 19 points on a day on a good night, you know. He's got the body to be a good NBA player, and his stats say otherwise too. And as far as the Minnesota Timberwolves themselves, they need a scorer like Anthony Edwards. Like Beasley's great. Jared Culver, he's got a lot of work coming ahead of him. I think with Anthony Edwards, he's a surefire candidate to be a starting shooting guard right next to D'Angelo Russell. They need another scorer like that to jolt the offense. I think Malik Beasley could just drop him off the bench as a six man, and with Jared Culver, you could slide him to the three. Uh, and also, I think as far as like his weaknesses, I think he could definitely work on his free throw because this year he was 58.3% in the free throw category. He could definitely just improve that as a shooting guard. And as far as like player comparisons go, when I see him, he reminds me a lot of Victor Oladipo, like the way the play style and everything. You know, like if you remember in 2017, I believe when he was on the Indiana Pacers, Victor Oladipo was a dunking machine. Like he was going crazy with those dunks. He's Anthony Edwards gives me that reminder, a bigger Victor Oladipo.
Very interesting. Now, Keyshawn, the Timberwolves have, let's say, selected Anthony Edwards. Now you're the Warriors. Bob Myers, in other words. Who are
Myers.
you selecting?
The Warriors are in the best position in this draft. If anything, they could, they have all the possibility, all the range on what they want to do, and with everything said and done, the Warriors need a big man. And if I were the Warriors, if I were Bob Myers per se, I'd be drafting James Wiseman from Memphis. And I mean, he's dropped off on a lot of draft boards. I saw he was ranked 7 on a lot of the draft boards, but I still think that he's got a promising career ahead of him. He's a 7'1" with a 7'9" or 7'8" wingspan, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but he's a very versatile big
I believe
who
it's
can, huh? 7'6"? Okay, yeah. So
yeah.
my bad, yeah. So he's got a 7'6" wingspan. He's a versatile big. He's a rim protector, and he can rebound the hell out of the ball. If anything, he could work on his post game because for centers, they definitely need post game like that. It's like if you look
Oh,
at if you look at big men today like Anthony Davis or even Giannis, for example, they got really good footwork and great post game. Even Joel Embiid. And I think if Wiseman could improve that, he could be one of the most dominant big men we'll ever see. He could be that generational talent in this class. As far as like a player comparison, I think he could. I might be skyrocketing here, but he could become like an Anthony Davis type player. But if he doesn't like pan out the way we see, he could definitely just be a Drummond or a Hassan Whiteside type. With your pick, if you were Bob Myers, Grant, with the number 2 pick, who would you take?
I'm gonna look at my options. Although I have my point guard and my shooting guard of Stephen Curry and Klay Thompson, and I got the newly acquired Andrew Wiggins. On top of that, my defensive player of the year, Draymond Green. I just need a center. With all due respect for Kevon Looney, he's not the center that, I want to have in my starting lineup because I don't know if I can trust him in that position long enough. And looking at my option, I have one center, one promising young center that can do the damage in the NBA is James Wiseman. Like you said, this guy is very strong. He can basically do everything. He can score. He can play defense. He can do everything from both ends of the floor. This guy is very aggressive. He has that toughness in him. That's what every single center needs if they want to draft him. All he needs to do is, like you said, work on his post skills. Because, like you said, it's something very vital that every center needs. Because if he's going to go up against Joel Embiid or Giannis or Jokic, it's going to be tough for him if he doesn't have that post skills. Because then the players are going to look at him like, look at this baby. He's a baby to me. And they're just going to steal the ball away from him or not let him get in the paint. They're going to bully him. I feel like the coaching staff, if the Warriors do select them, they could definitely help him work out on his post skills. And besides that, he just needs to develop. Like every NBA player that gets selected, or excuse me, college player or international player that gets drafted, they need to develop. That's what's important because if they don't develop in the right way, they're never going to grow to be on top of the chain of the NBA.
Great
And if there's two
explanation.
players that I could do, is DeAndre Jordan and David Robinson.
David Robinson.
Yeah, the way I see both of those NBA players play, I can also see James Wiseman in the way where they basically play offense the same way, and they can also play defense the same way with their movement and with their aggression. I can see that in them for sure.
Great stuff, man. Great stuff. And no, definitely, bro. I agree with everything you say. If you want to be a good center, you gotta like improve those post skills and that footwork. But moving on to the third pick with the Charlotte Hornets. First off, props to the Charlotte Hornets. No one expected them to be in the top 3 of this draft class, but
I thought they were going to be the worst team in the NBA. If it was last year, like exactly a year ago, I would have said this would have been the worst team.
dude, yeah, no, definitely, bro. But Devontae Graham and Terry Rozier, they prevailed, man. But if you were the Charlotte Hornets, if you were Mitch Kupchak, who would you take?
Good question, Keyshawn. And before I let you know who I would select for Mitch Kupchak, I want to give props to the Hornets because, like I said just right now, a year ago, if people asked me, what do you think the Charlotte Hornets are going to do? Are they going to be a draft lottery team or are they going to be an NBA playoff team? I would laugh at their face, say, like, what, you think this team's going to go to the playoffs? I mean, although they didn't, but they were very, very close into getting that spot and even getting invited to the bubble in Orlando, Florida. But I want to give a clap, give a shout out to them. Good for them. Devontae Graham, Miles Bridges, and PJ Washington, the new drafted player.
Great
They've done
rookie.
they all done a fascinating job, and if they can continue to develop, I feel like they'll be one of those promising teams in the upcoming years in the NBA. And with that being said, I'm gonna take Anthony Edwards. Everybody knows how astonishing this young individual is. In Georgia, he averaged 19 points per game and five rebounds per game. Those are pretty good numbers for a shooting guard like that. And he can basically do everything. He just needs to work on being a little unselfish and play a little bit more team ball. And other than that, he should just continue to get adapted into the league. He just needs to learn how to slowly grow once he gets drafted and once he plays in the summer league. I want him to start working on himself more, making himself a better player. Although he's a great prospect, he should still look at himself saying, you know what? I feel like I can improve more as a player. Put yourself in the gym and work yourself every day. And if there's two players that I could compare him to, one player I can compare him to is Zach LaVine.
Ooh,
Both these players in common they have is the explosiveness that they have. They're both very explosive players, great shooters, and they're very fast and athletic people. They play very similarly. That's who I can view him as.
great stuff. Great stuff.
Keyshawn,
Mhm.
you or Mitch Kupchak or MG, let's say, who are you selecting for the Hornets?
I want to just dwell back to the 2013 draft when they drafted Cody Zeller, who they thought was going to be the most dominant center who could compete in the ranks of Anthony Davis and such. And they thought that he would be taking them to the playoffs and he would be helping them terrorize the league. But no, it's the opposite. On that team, he's like an average starter. If he was on a playoff team, he would be an average role player, and on a championship, probably a bench player. And with that said, I think I would go with the third pick. I take Onyeka Okongwu, the USC star the USC star, the center, and Onyeka has some really really physically he's physically gifted. He's got good touch as a big man. He's very fierce. He's menacing in pain. I mean, he with his size, his sheer strength, he can dominate the boards and such, and he definitely utilizes those physical skill sets really well. And he's a threat in the paint. It's not gonna be easy nights scoring on this guy. With that said, though, he could definitely work on his offensive skill set because he's definitely very reliant of his physical skill set rather than his offensive touch. And like with James Wiseman, if a big man can polish their offensive skills, they could be even a bigger threat. But this guy's definitely a special player. He's gonna be good. And when I see him play, it reminds me of two players. First one is Idris Bam Adebayo of the Heat. I mean, Bam, he's another player that just rose the ranks. I believe he was an All-Star this year, and I mean, he played out of his mind. He's still playing out of his mind in the playoffs right now. Props to him. But you know, Bam and Onyeka, Bam, when Bam was in college, he kind of reminded me of what Onyeka is doing right now. And another player that kind of reminds me of Onyeka in the league right now is Montrezl Harrell, because Onyeka and Montrezl, they bring this dog mentality into the game or into the floor, that they're not going to just play around. They're taking the game seriously and they're going to be as fierce as they can. And with Montrezl, he's fuck size. He might be short, but he's not gonna let any other center bully him around. And I think Onyeka is the same. He's not gonna let anyone else bully him around. He's gonna use his sheer strength to get through.
They got that Kobe mentality.
The Kobe mentality, the Mamba mentality.
Yes, sir.
Cold-blooded, ice in the veins, baby. Yeah. No. All right, Grant, with the fourth pick, the Chicago Bulls. Before I even tell you who you're gonna pick, let's congratulate the Bulls, man. Congrats, because
Right.
they recently just fired Jim Boylan, and I know how unhappy Bulls fans were with Jim Boylan. And to be fair, I mean, he wasn't a great coach. I mean, I'm not even going to sugarcoat it. He just wasn't a great coach. He was ruining the team's schemes. It felt like they were playing cluelessly out there. And I hope with this firing, they sign someone good. I hope Kenny Atkinson is the new Bulls coach, you know? But
Right.
with that said, though, who do you think the Bulls would take with the fourth pick?
Before we start things off, like I said, I want to congratulate the Bulls for firing Jim Boylan. Like his system wasn't working well with this young, astonishing team. I mean, players like Kobe White, Zach LaVine, Larry Markkinen. He just wasn't getting adjusted into this team. And he's not only that, he's been having problems with this team, with the organization lately too. Like he has a terrible record as a coach. Like he just wasn't the best fitted coach. And with that being said, if I were the Bulls, I'm taking the small forward of Danny Avdija
Ooh.
from Akeem Tel Aviv for the team.
Hmm?
And this young man, although the stat sheet doesn't show that he's been putting the best numbers, this guy, if you look when you're watching his highlights, you can see how dominant he is and how prestigious he is as a player himself. He's just an all around player, and he's very intangible too in a way where it's very difficult to guard a player like him. But when you watch his videos, he's very quick. He's like his reaction's very fast. He knows what's going on, and he can shoot the ball well too. He's very aggressive too. He's very aggressive. And if there's one player that does come in mind is Hedo Turkoglu, the Turkish man that used to play for the Orlando Magic. He gives me the way they play similarly is they can both score the ball very well, and their reactions are very similar in a way where Turco knows when to guard people and when to play the offensive set the right way, and he just plays similarly like him. The only weakness that he has, however, is his strength. He just needs to get a little bulk. He just needs to bulk up a little bit, get on the proteins, lift weights. I feel like other than that, I feel like he's ready. He's ready to go. He just needs to develop. And also, what I like about Denny is he's a great ball handler. It's very important to have a small forward like him, and who can have the great skill of having to handle the ball very very good in a good way. And for someone like him, they can easily he can easily play in the one spot, and they won't even have a problem or being worried that the point guard could possibly steal the ball from him. So therefore, if I were the Bulls, he's my selection. And on top of that, they have Otto Porter. Like he's not a bad player, but his game's been declining lately in the years. And with this contract, I don't see the Bulls playing him any longer and possibly looking to trade him to a different NBA team. Keyshawn, you're the Bulls. Who are you taking?
Well, with everything said and done, I mean, I think the Bulls should go with. I think they should go take talent here and take Lamelo Ball from the Owara Hawks and Lamelo. I mean,
Hey,
big baller brand, baby. LeVar, baby, Lonzo. LaMelo has this, he brings this, jolt. He brings this, like, vibe where it just energizes the whole team, I guess, per se, Where I'm just gonna straight up say who I think he's like Jason Williams, white chocolate. When he was on the Kings, how fun this guy was to watch. I mean, I've seen the highlights, bro. The man was saucing other players, man. Like, he was, like, playing before, like, NBA got, like, fun like that. And Lamelo brings that same sort of energy, that same sort of ball handling skills, that passing, even the shooting. And I think he would be a snug fit with the Bulls because I mean think about it this way: they drafted Kobe. I get that they drafted Kobe White last year, but they also did have Chris Dunn, and they signed they traded for Tomas Satoransky, I believe, on top of that. And so I think if they get, I think maybe this case, you take talent over fit, and Lamelo would be like a great, I think, member of the Bulls. I think he'd be able to just rejuvenate that offense with Zach LaVine, Laurie Markkinen, and Wendell Carter. I think he'd make a great fit, whether he be playing the one or the two. And I mean, if he could just bulk up a little more, he could even possibly play the three. Because I mean, the league wants ball handling threes like that. And yeah, I
Right.
think yeah, I believe that LaMelo would be the great pick here.
Very interesting.
Yeah. All right, so with Cleveland, number 5, great. I mean, they were expected to be like the first pick or second pick, but it's okay. Top 5 is still good. They didn't drop any further than that. I think this is a great spot for them still, regardless. I mean, I get that they could have done better, but it's okay. Top 5. And Grant, if you're the Cleveland Cavaliers, who would you take?
Well, if I were the Cavs, before I make my selection, I just want to say it's been a very weird situation for them in the case where they have Tristan Thompson aging and Kevin Love aging too. They're not performing the way they were 3 years ago when LeBron and Kyrie were on the same team. And it's been very weird. It's been a very weird situation. We're trying to trade him, but things just go on and off. Whatever. So, if I were the Cavs, I'm giving up on Kevin Love and selecting Onyeka Okongwu. This guy's an exceptional rim protector who can block shots in a one-on-one situation, and this guy can play great on the defensive end. If you look at his stats in USC, this guy's been averaging over 2 blocks per game, and that's that's an astonishing number right there. Let's have a young and to develop him into an NBA prime defender. This guy can be very serious and very lethal on the defensive end. Like the offensive side, however, it's just even better. This guy's in USC averaged 16 points per game, and he also grabs 8 boards a game too. That's very amazing. This guy can just do everything. And if there is one player that I could compare him to is Bam Adebayo, like you said. The way they play the game on the offensive side is just very similar. The way they shoot, the way they attack the rim is it's very similar. And if he can get better, if he can develop, I can see my best being Alonzo Mourning. I really see that game of him, and if he can develop more. However, if there was a couple categories that I can see him developing, the first one will be his jump shot. Although he is playing good on the offensive side, his jump shots aren't that great. But if he can develop that, I can see him averaging about 22 points or more per game. That's how I can view it. And another thing that he could work on is his post skills. Because like I said about James Wiseman earlier, he he can work on his post skills, and if he can do that, he won't have a difficult time in the paint. And at the end of the day, if you have weak post skills, that's not going to make you. You're not going to be a good player. You're going to be a bench player later on.
Great stuff, man.
So Keyshawn, you're the Atlanta Hawks. You have Trae Young, John Collins, newly acquired Clint Capella, Cam Reddish, DeAndre Hunter. You have all these astonishing young players that could develop
Mhm.
to be an All-Star or even possibly a Hall of Famer. Who are you taking to add into that future dynasty?
I actually want to backtrack real quick. I know you gave your take on the Cleveland Cavaliers. I just want to kind of give my quick take, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead,
Uh,
man.
yeah, no, you said you would draft, think Onyeka Okongwu. I would actually, for me, in this case, if I was the Cavs with the 5th pick, I would actually take Obi Toppin from Dayton, man. Uh, like we
Okay.
said, with the whole Kevin Love situation, it's time for them to get rid of him, and they need to fill up that, they need to find a way to fill up that spot. I think this draft is the solution to that. If they were to draft the college player of the year, Obi Toppin, onto that team, he'd be a snug fit right next to, Colin Sexton and Andre Drummond. He gives me that Blake Griffin type of vibes, being an athletic big who has
Yep.
sheer strength, and, he's a good leader. He was a good leader on Dayton, definitely he could just work on his IQ and whatnot, and I think he could definitely be a star in this league. Now with the Atlanta Hawks, as you said, with the 6th pick, yeah, that team is looking great. You got Trae Young, you got Kevin Herter, you got DeAndre Hunter, you got Cam Reddish, John Collins, and Clint Capella, who's still a mystery on how they're gonna play with him. With that said, though, I know they got all these wings last year, but I would go with another wing, and with the 6th pick, I take Denny Avdiha from Maccabi Tel Aviv, Israel. Denny's a sensational foreign player. He's the foreign player of the man, like he's like this year in a sense, where I think every year there's always that one foreign player, that one foreign prospect everyone looks for. In 2017, that was Lauri Markkanen. In 2018, Luka. Last year there wasn't like any real foreign prospect that people are looking for. Maybe Rui Hachimura might be the guy, we can say. But this year, it's Denny Avdiija. He's the foreign prospect that everyone's like talking about. And yeah, like you said, his stat sheets don't show much, but he's definitely a very fluid offensive player who can shoot the ball lights out and can stretch the floor. He's 6'9". He's a 6'9" combo forward. That's very lethal, He's a great ball handler. And I like your comparison of him as Hito Turkoglu. He definitely reminds me of that. But he also gives me flashes of two other players, Gallo Inari and Luka Doncic. Luka, in the sense that like he's a great ball handler, like Luka. Two forwards who can handle the ball well and shoot the ball well, have good precision and such. Like I said, good precision and stuff. And he with Gallo, Gallo can stretch the floor. He's a big 6'9" player, 6'10" who can stretch the floor, play small forward and power forward. Same with Denny Avdiija. He can do the same thing. He has that same skill set, and I think right next to Trae Young, he could be a great player. Now, if you were the Atlanta Hawks, Grant, with the sixth pick, who would you take?
Well, I'm looking at my options, and if I were to choose one player, it'd be Isaac Okoro. Now, the reason I'm gonna take him is in a reason where Cam Reddish, like he did an okay job as a small forward. Not that he did a bad job, but he didn't live up to his expectation as a rookie, which is okay. It happens. He has time to develop, like I said about the other rookies in the previous time. Now, when I look at Isaac Okoro, like he didn't do a bad job back in college. He averaged about 13 points per game and about 4 rebounds per game, which isn't too bad. He can play great defense. If I look at this whole draft list, I would say the best defender, one of the best defenders is Isaac Okoro. He's a very tough competitor, and in his highlights and in the games that I've watched, this guy's just very tough. He gives me that Kobe Bryant mentality. He gives me that Damian Lillard mentality in that sense, which is what I like about him. And his strength, he has lots of strength, which makes it hard for the opponents to guard against him or, go up against him. But if there's like a few things that he can work on is one is ball handling. He needs to work on his ball handling as a small forward. Because if he wants to excel very far, he needs to work on his ball handling, and also he needs to work on his jump shot. Couple of the offensive categories, because if he wants to if he doesn't want to decline in the years to come, when he does get drafted, he needs to work on ball handling and the jump shot to score more and to make himself a more prominent player. And if there's two players I can compare him to, one is Justin Anderson. Now with this particular player, I can see him moving the same way as Isaac Okoro was. I can see both of them playing the same offensive way and the defensive side. But if Isaac Okoro can live up to his expectations as an NBA player, he can be the next Caron Butler. The way that they flourish the floor, or the way they play the game in general, I can vision a mini Caron Butler in him, and possibly even moving past him, being a better player.
Yeah, that's definitely good stuff, man. I could definitely see a little Karam Butler in Isaac Okoro, man. That's for sure. That's for sure. All right. So we are on the seventh pick. First off, shout out to Crispy Flakes. If you guys watch him, he was raging last night. I mean, go check it out. This man is a huge Pistons fan. He has great rebuilds, but he was raging because of them getting the seventh pick. If you were the Detroit Pistons, who would you be taking, Grant?
Well, it's been a tough season for them. From starting from last year, actually, it's been acquiring Blake Griffin, which has to do with them giving up on a great star of Tobias Harris. Although they acquired a better player, Blake Griffin overall, like he's just been dealing with injuries and them and shipping their longtime Piston player Andre Drummond to the Cavs, everything's been broken up. They do have a couple of players, however, that are promising players is Christian Wood and Sekou Doumbouya. And a raw talent that I want to add to the side is LaMelo Ball. LaMelo Ball overall is a great offensive player. This guy puts up 17 points per game in the Illawarra Hawks team in Australia and also averages almost 7 assists per game. And on top of that, this guy has great passing, great ball handling, and he's a great playmaker, which is something that I believe the Pistons could use out of him. And having Derrick Rose on his side, which is a great mentor in the sense where he was an MVP at the age of 22 and putting up unbelievable numbers at the time before his injury. But LaMelo, however, can work on his defense because in the Illawarra Hawks or Lithuania or in the JBA, he wasn't really the best defender. You know, like players would go past him or it would be easy to post up on him. He just wasn't the best option when it comes to the defense. And he also needed to work on the strength. When he works on his strength, things are going to get much easier for him. But when he's small and thin, it's really hard for him on the defensive side. And if there was one player that I could compare him to, it would be Trae Young. What I see in two of them are two categories that they do exactly is the great passing and is also shooting. Both of them can shoot very well and they can pass very well too. And during certain times, you know, whenever there's a moment where they need a pass for the specific player to shoot, they can give those great and smart passes for them to succeed as a team. Kishan, if you were the Detroit Pistons, what would you take during this rebuilding time?
Yeah, no, definitely rebuilding time. That's for sure. You could say that again. I mean, they are in cap hell. They need to do a lot of tweaking if they want to get back into their successful days. If I were the Detroit Pistons, I'd be gearing towards taking Iowa State guard, 6'5", Tyrese Halliburton. And
Okay.
with Halliburton, he's a tall and rangy point guard. He's got long arms and he uses his height to his advantage on passing the ball really well. He could like dominate over shorter guards than him. And it's always, I mean, like right now in the NBA, they want taller guards playing the one. They want look at like Lonzo Ball, 6'6" guard. You got Ben Simmons, a 6'10" guard. I mean, this is what the NBA wants. They kind of show that like the NBA teams want taller guards who can ball handle really well. And Tyrese Halliburton is one of those guards. He can ball handle, he can shoot. Oh, he's offensively pretty well, but he could definitely improve on his shot creation. He could to be a legit threat, he could be a better shooter, a better scorer. As far as like how he is or like his comparison, I definitely see a lot of Lonzo Ball in him as they're both solid defenders. They're both great playmakers. I think that's like the reason that I would say he's like Lonzo Ball. He's an extremely elite playmaker. And I think having, like you said, having Derrick Rose around, Tyrese Halliburton's game might improve a whole lot.
It might take his game to the next level.
Of course, of course.
Keyshawn, for the New York Knicks, it's been very difficult, having the owner like
Mm-hmm.
James Dolan and being
Yeah.
unlucky in the past several years with the draft lottery. If you were the Knicks during this terrible time for their organization, who are you going to take with the eighth pick?
Yeah, I don't know what's worse for them, the environment that we're living in or the draft. I mean, the NBA is just treating them really well, really terribly, and like they're just having to put bags over their head, like walk in shame. Regardless, the Knicks fans should stay up in light. They shouldn't be like getting down about this because with the eighth pick, I think there's still a lot of potential good players. And if I were the Knicks, I use that eighth pick to draft Killian Hayes from Ratio Farm Ulm, the German team. Killian Hayes, he's definitely a great prospect. He's a dog in the sense that he's crafty. He dominates the floor if he plays. He's a great scorer. I mean, defensively he could work. He could definitely work on his defense. But as a offensive guard, he's there. He knows what he's doing. He can assist. He can shoot the ball at will, and he's not afraid. And that reminds me of Goran Dragic. On the Heat, when Goran Dragic is on the floor, he can pass the ball to Jimmy Butler or Bam Adebayo with ease, shoot the ball very well. I mean, the dude was, I believe, a two-time All-Star or I think a one-time All-Star. Correct me if I'm wrong. but he was an all-star type player, and he definitely proved that he was able to like be a great contributor in the playoffs when the Heat needed him the most, you know, and he's still doing that till this day. Now, Grant, if you were the New York Knicks, I mean, if you were them, if you had the eighth pick, who would you take?
You know, like you have some players that could be promising in the future, but also some players that are lacking. But if I were to go with a player, I'm gonna go with which what you had was Killian Hayes. You know, this guy for a point guard, this guy's very big. 6'5", that's pretty big. It's like compared to the other point guards, they're just like average size at around 6'2", 6'3". But this guy has an advantage, and he's also a great ball handler too, which is what's important in today's NBA. But like you said, however, he could work on his defense because if he has to go up against guards like Steph Curry or Tyler Hero, Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, or D'Angelo Russell, Damian Lillard, he needs to start understanding that these players aren't college players. These are professional players. And, excuse me, they didn't play for college in overseas. These players aren't overseas players. They're more rather better players who are betterly developed. Yeah, he can just work on his defense for sure. And if there's like a couple players that I could see in him is D'Angelo Russell. Now, the reason I'm not saying because they're both lefties, but it's the fact that the way they handle the ball and the way they move the ball is what I see a lot in them. And also another player that I see him is Kirk Henry. Now the reason being is because like they can play the same way on the offensive side, and the way how they're versatile. They're both very versatile players. For a guard like him, for the M2, they can move the ball in the same way and they can play in the same position and the same variety of positions is how I see them. So
Kirk
yeah, if
Henry.
I were the Knicks, I'm gonna go with this kid. He's very promising. I've seen his highlights and he's very promising.
Kirk Heinrich was a straight dog, man. That's for sure.
He
Like that,
was. People need to
he
put
was.
respect to his name. He
Yeah,
was one of those more underrated players.
kids, if you don't know who Kirk Heinrich is, go search him up on YouTube. Go check out his highlights.
And you guys were like, damn, Grant and Keyshawn were right.
All right. All right. With the Washington Wizards, they have the ninth pick this year. I mean, hey, that's actually not a bad position for them. John Wall is going to be coming back soon. This team is well, we don't know what this team's in. They're kind of in a purgatory situation where they're not the best team in the league, but they're not the worst team in the league either. You know, they're just like so middle ground.
They're
That's not
mediocre.
mediocre. Yeah, they're in mediocrity, and that's not like the greatest position for a team to be in, but they got to make the best of it. And if you were the Washington Wizards, who would you take?
Well, when I look at this team, they have some talent that could be, very well developed in the way to dominate in the league in the future. And as looking in the draft list, I see a lot of promising players. And if I'm gonna have to go with one player, it's gonna be Patrick Williams. Now the reason being is because this guy in general is a very good defensive player. He's a very good defender. He can guard basically other positions for his height of 6'7", and he's also a good shooter too in that case. And also the one thing that he's also the other thing that he's good at is being aggressive. Back in Florida State, he was very aggressive, which is what led to his success in college. But what he could work on, however, is on the strength. It's very important that he needs to work on his strength because if he doesn't do that, he's gonna get eaten up very easily in the league. And he also, I see a Chris Singleton in him. Like I can compare to him in the sense where they're both very athletic and, they're two-way wing players that play very dominantly in the league. So, Keyshawn, if you're the Wizards, who are you taking?
I mean, if I were the Wizards, I'd take the teammate of Patrick Williams, Devin Vassell, with the ninth pick. And Vassell, he's also a defensive wing, a 3-and-D wing. And with his play style, I think he would fit in just so well because he's extremely defensive oriented. Not extremely defensive oriented, but he's definitely defensive oriented. He's a 3-and-D prospect who has a bright ceiling ahead of him. He can shoot the ball well. What he should be working on is his shot creation, whereas he can't create his own shots. He has to get his shots created for him, like from the stats that we've seen and like his highlights. And the way he plays, he reminds me of a lengthier Kent Bazemore, a great rebounder, a great wing, great 3-and-D wing who can shoot the ball well, you know. Uh, Devin Vessel is a great prospect in general. You know, I think he has a bright future ahead of him, and I think in all, I think he's just a great pick.
Wait. Oh. So when I look at the Suns, like they did a great job in the bubble. They went 8-0, and Monty Williams got coach of the bubble,
Hmm.
and yet they still got eliminated somehow. I feel like they deserve to play
Crazy.
against the Blazers more than Memphis. With all the respect for Memphis, they're building very good team. Their era is going to be the era for this team is going to be on a different level with John Moran and Jaren Jackson and Dylan Brooks. But with the Suns, they have D-Book for the shooting guard, Ricky Rubio, pass first player, which I would love to have on my team too. And they have DeAndre Ayton, the promising center. Now, when I look at this, I'm thinking I need a power forward. Even though Dario Saric played well, he's not playing his best game like he was in the Sixers. If anything, his game kind of declined throughout the years. And he's getting old too. His age is vastly increasing. It's not going to go down anymore. If I'm going to take a player, it's going to be Precious Achiuwa, the power forward from Memphis. This guy can basically do everything. Just like his former teammate James Wiseman, they're both big men who are dominant on the floor. They can go on both ends, offensively and defensively. This guy has been averaging 16 points per game and 10 rebounds, which are great numbers for a college player. And he has that dog mentality too. Like, this guy just has that dog mentality. If there's one thing that he could work on, however, is his post skills. He just needs to keep, developing himself into being the better post player, and he needs to work on his feet feet skills, and he'll just succeed. He's a very promising player, and I feel like the Suns should trust their pick on this guy. And if there's a player that I could view him as, it's Gerald Wallace. They're both very dominating players, put up great numbers for their respective teams, and they're great on the defensive side and the offensive side. If you guys watch their videos, you guys will understand why. Kishan, you're the Suns. Who are you taking?
Well, like before I give my pick, like you said, props to them for going 8-0. They definitely deserve to play against the Blazers. Like you said, the Grizzlies, great future ahead of them. You know, John Morant's going to be a great player, but I think in this case, in this scenario, the Suns are more deserving to get that chance to play against the Blazers than they did. You know, but with everything said and done, call me crazy, but with the 10th pick, I'm taking the Kentucky guard Tyrese Maxey for the Suns.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I know they have a lot of guard. They stockpiled on guards with Devin Booker and Ricky Rubio. I think Mikal Bridges is a guard slash forward. But what Tyrese Maxey brings to the floor is this jolt of energy. He reminds me of Lou Williams in the sense that he's a short guard who can create for himself, and he has this like spark plug. He doesn't care about how short he is. He's gonna spark up an offense. He'll go in, shoot the ball at will. You know. Um, Maybe he brings energy to the floor. He's definitely a great prospect. Like I said, I think he's like a Lou Williams type player. You can play this guy off the bench, and he'll be a great addition to the Suns. Maybe if Ricky Rubio's tired, sub him out and put Maxey next to Devin Booker, and I think that could be a little great dynamic duo right there.
You can add that flair into the lineup.
Exactly. Now, quick shout out to the Spurs, by the way. I just want to show off my hat real quick. I'm wearing the Spurs hat. They're not my favorite team. I just like this hat a lot. But yeah.
Although I'm a Lakers fan too, like Spurs, like that's the organization that I respect the most. They build a great history. They have a great coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time, Greg Popovich, and on top
Mhm.
of that, they have great players like Tim Duncan, Manu Ginobili, Tony Parker, and so on. And it's been tough, you know. Like ever since DeMar DeRozan got traded from Toronto Raptors to the Spurs, his game's been declined. He hasn't been showing who he really was back in Toronto, and LaMarcus Aldridge is aging. His game's declining. He's been more injury prone. He's been more prone to injuries. And and also when I see a center in Jakob Poeltl, like he's an okay center. He's more of a center that could be played from the bench to later on gaining onto the court. And with that being said, I would take Daniel Toru, the guy from the center from Minnesota. This guy also reminds me of James Wiseman and has just being dominant. This guy has the size. He's a great defensive player. This guy puts up great numbers on the defensive side. And I'm not even going to talk about the offensive side because that's just on a different level. This guy is putting up over 20 points per game. And he's been proving to himself that he is indeed ready to play in the NBA to show that he'll develop to be one of those more dominant centers later on. He just needs to develop more. Once he gets in, he just needs to take care of himself to make sure that he wouldn't be prone to injuries and, keep himself ready to play every night. And if there's a couple players that I can see him is Skal Labissiere and Bobby Portis. With these few players right here that I just announced, these players are dominant players that can score and can play great defense on both ends. Although Skal Labissiere has been traded throughout teams from Sacktown to Portland to Atlanta, he's still a promising player. And if I were Hawks, I would put in lots of trust in Skal. And for Bobby Portis, he hasn't been a bad player. He's a good role player. He's not the all-star, but he's definitely a good role player, can score, and can play great defense on both ends. A little aggressive. He's a little physical in a bad way, but, as he ages, he'll be more mature. And I can see Daniel Toru being those players. Keyshawn, you're the Spurs. Who are you taking?
Like I said, much respect to that franchise, man. It's one of the most esteemed franchises out there, building their way up from the draft and such. They didn't have a need to get any high-end free agent like many teams do. That's kind of like a self-built team right there. That's why I'm wearing this hat today, just to show them respect. And if I were the Spurs, I would actually go with Florida State wing Patrick Williams. Now,
Right.
Greg Popovich, he loves his wing players. I mean, come on, Kawhi Leonard was that project player. No one would have thought that he would have been that great of a defensive prospect. Even before him, Bruce Bowen was the other player that Greg Popovich would develop and he use in his lineup. And I think Patrick Williams could be that type of player, a winged player who's 3-and-D. He can shoot the ball really well, but he can defend the hell out of a player. I definitely I think that Patrick Williams could improve his offense, but his defense is on spot. Pop won't have a problem with his defense. Pop will help him polish his offense, but the defense is there. And when I see Patrick Williams play, I could see like a Robert Covington type player, the ideal 3-and-D player in the league right now, and I think Patrick Williams could be a great snug fit for the San Antonio Spurs.
And like they say, offense wins you games, defense wins you championships. And
Exactly.
having a player like that could lead you to a championship indeed.
Mm-hmm.
Keyshawn, if you were the Sacramento Kings, they got Vlade Divac. He took himself out of the GM spot. And it's been tough. Since 2006, they've just been fighting for a lottery pick, and they haven't been really, been clinching to the playoff spot. It's been really it's a complex situation for them. What would you take if you're the Kings? Which player are you looking for?
When they had the chance to get a star player, they kind of fucked it up, and when they did get star players through the draft lottery, they also fucked that up too.
Yeah, straight up.
And they straight up just fucked that up. But if I was the Sacramento Kings, the Sacktown Kings, I take Precious Achiuwa from Memphis. I really like Precious. He's definitely one of the most underrated players in this whole class.
Very complex player.
He's another 3-and-D wing I really like. He's versatile. He can play both the small forward and power forward. 6'9", great teammate of James Wiseman. I could definitely, like you said earlier, definitely he could polish his post game and I could definitely see him polishing his offensive game. And he'd be actually a great addition for the Kings because Harrison Barnes is not getting any younger. You know, he's getting older by the minute and his game's not getting any better. I think Precious would be a great fit right next to Marvin Bagley and, De'Aaron Fox, who are defensive prowesses right there. I mean, I wish well for Marvin Bagley. I hope he gets healthy again. But with De'Aaron Fox, you know, a guy who's an electric player, who's known for his steal prowess. You know, he could like steal the ball really well. He's just a great defender at that position. I think Precious Achiuwa could gel in with that offense and defense really well. I think, yeah, with 12th pick, I see Precious Achiuwa going to the Kings. If you were the Kings, Grant, who would you take?
Well, I'm going to look at my options, and with drafting Marvin Bagley a couple of years ago by the Kings, it's been very tough ever since because this guy's been dealing with injuries. It just, like, his health has been declining very badly, and he hasn't been seeing the court much. He's just been seeing the bench and the doctors throughout his career time so far. It's been very unfortunate. But I still, like, I wouldn't give up on him. I would still give him time to, see how he can develop and play in the NBA. But if I were the Kings, I'm still going to select the power forward Sadiq Bey. Now, before people say, whoa, like, you wouldn't want to, like, you're just giving up on Marvin Bagley. I'm not giving up on him. But I want to see if Sadiq Bey can play at a better level, if he cannot get injury prone. This guy has been putting up great numbers. First thing that comes into mind when I think of Sadiq Bey is his defense. He's been a great defender in college. Like, this guy's been he's just been locking up on the offensive players. He's been, he's been really scary on the defensive side, which gives me a little bit of Kawhi Leonard defense. And also another thing that I like about him is his ball handling. Like, for a big man like him, he can handle the ball, which I remember of Nikola Jokic. They're both big men who can handle the ball really well. And look at Nikola Jokic. He's been succeeding in the NBA. Got his max contract. He's been balling out. And he's just scaring the other people, the other players. But there's a few things that he could work on, however. First thing that he should work on is his athleticism. He's not very athletic. I feel like if he can condition himself and put his body to proper use, I feel like he can become a better player, can be more prominent, and he also can become more important for the organization. And he also needs to work on his quickness. He needs to work on his feet movement. He needs to learn how to be fast and have a quick reaction. If he doesn't do that, then he's going to see himself on the bench. And if there's one player that comes into my mind that I see Sadiq Bey in is Chandler Hutchinson. They play very similarly in a way where they move the ball the same way, they play offense the same way, and the vision that they have on the court is not too bad. So I see a lot of Chandler Hutchinson in them.
Great stuff. Great. I'm surprised that you put Sadiq Bey that high, man. I personally don't have him that high.
Believe
But
me, excuse me to interrupt you. Lots of people have been I've been telling them Sadiq Bey is the deal. Like, he should go top 50. He should go in the lottery. People are like, oh no, you're crazy. Trust me, I've seen his highlights. I've seen his stats. I'm telling you, this guy's a promising player. He might be the steal of the draft. Just look at Donovan Mitchell. Just look at the other players. We don't look at Bam. Who knows? This
definitely, anything's
guy,
possible.
exactly. Just look at Isaiah Thomas at the end of the day. He's been last pick. Like, no one gives a shit about him. But look what he done. Look what he's done. Although, his hip got fucked up. It's like everything else has been good though in the past. But yeah, it doesn't matter what the mock draft says. You gotta watch his game really closely. And I
I
see
agreed. I agree with you, man.
he's a good player. I have a lot of trust in him.
Mhm. All right, man. I want to move on to the New Orleans Pelicans. Now that they were the luckiest franchise last year for getting the number one pick. They were in the best position when they traded Anthony Davis. They got even greater assets and they were able to flip that all and they built a really nice team. They were just short of the playoffs this year, but they can they can do good stuff, you know. And with their position, with the 13th pick, who would you take, Grant?
Well, I'm looking at the Pelicans. They're already stacked up. Zion Williamson at the 4, Lonzo at the 1, Drew Holiday at the 2, Brandon Ingram at the 3, and you have Jackson Hayes at the 5. And on top of that, they have great bench players like J.J. Redick, Nickel William Alexander. They have Josh Hart, and so on. But if at this point, if I were the Pelicans, I'm gonna look to add more shooting, to have more a better offensive player, and I'm gonna get Devin Vassell. I see a lot of Robert Covington and also Klay Thompson. No, I don't want you to think that what I'm saying is absurd. But believe me, this guy very big for a shooting guard, 6'7". Can you imagine that? And he plays defense just like Klay Thompson too, with the quick feet movement and the shooting like Robert Covington plus Klay Thompson. I see a lot of that in them, and they're a great defensive guard too. Klay Thompson's also a great defensive guard, and Devin Vassell as well. If you look at his college highlights, you'll see how he does. He steals the ball greatly, and he also can block the shots well, which is what Klay Thompson also does. So I see a lot of Klay Thompson if he can develop more.
Great stuff, man. I mean, we both kind of had that similar vibe for Devin Vassell. I mean, he's definitely got something special, coming his way.
Now, you're the Celtics. Who are you taking?
Well, before I go to my favorite team of all time, I want to backtrack real quick. I want to give my take on New Orleans, if you don't mind.
Oh no,
Uh,
go ahead. It's all you.
yeah, yeah. So with New Orleans, I saw you took Devin Vassell, and I went with another direction. I actually went Isaac Okoro from Auburn here, and Isaac is a great defender. He's got defensive prowess.
Let me pause you right there. You have
Mhm.
Brandon Ingram. Why would you take Isaac Okoro?
Well, because with Ingram, everything's not certain yet. And on top of that, the NBA is a very positionless game now. If you see, you got short center lineups too. You got Montrezl Harrell running a 6'7" guy running center. I think at this point in the NBA, the center is a kind of a dying breed. Like even though I was just like earlier giving praise to James Wiseman and Onyeka Okongwu for being such great centers, the reality of the NBA is that the center's a dying position, but I don't want to get into that right now. That's a whole other topic on its own. Isaac Okoro doesn't demand attention. That's the great thing about him. He's not like he doesn't need to be a starter to show his game and to show how well he plays. I think he could be a great bench player on the New Orleans Pelicans. We the way he plays, his defensive prowess. I think he will be a great addition to that. The team doesn't lack defense. I think the team has all the defense in the world with Zion and Jackson Hayes and Drew Holiday. But I think add another defensive guy. Like you said earlier, offense might win games, but defense wins championships. This guy can be that type of pedigree, that type of player, where he can have that defensive prowess to dominate the defensive boards when, like during crunch time, when Brandon Ingram's like out of the game. This guy can go in and just like be the energy guy, be the defensive prowess. And when I see him play, he reminds me a lot of Justice Winslow when he was playing on Duke. Uh, Justice Winslow on
Hey,
Duke. Justice Winslow on Duke was a monster. He was a great defensive player. Right now, I mean, he's more injury prone nowadays. We see point guard Winslow dominating. But when Winslow was on Duke with Jahlil Okafor, I mean, two players that have fallen off. But like when he was on Duke, he was playing so well. Now, with my favorite team of all time, the Boston Celtics. Quick fact: I'm a Boston Celtics fan. Grant's a huge Lakers fan. So
we're getting that championship this year, by the way.
yeah, I don't think so. Congrats to the Celtics. You're just 3-0 against the Sixers. And
I want to cut you off right there. Although I'm a Lakers fan, I respect the Celtics organization a lot. Not Lakers fans gonna say, "Oh, I don't like this guy. This guy's giving praise to the Celtics." No, let's be real. This organization is by far the most successful organization in the way where one, they have 17 championships, and two, in the past decade, Danny Ainge has been doing a great job in the way where one, they have a winning culture. They've been going to playoffs consistently, and also they have a lottery pick at the same time too. With that Paul Pierce and Kevin Garnett trade, they've just been collecting trade pieces, which does include Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Like that's amazing. Like they know what they're doing. they're winning on both ends of the NBA.
Oh yeah, for
Like
sure.
crazy.
And like you said, I'm also from LA, but I grew up a Celtics fan, but I still have so much respect for the Lakers too. Like the Celtics, uh, the Lakers, they're such a successful franchise, a big media market. Now it's starting to sound a PSA about the Lakers and Celtics. I want to get back to this now, but the Celtics, they're in a position where they can get a project player and develop him. You know, last year they drafted Romeo Langford. I wasn't a huge fan of that pick, but I understand what they were doing there. You know, they're in a winning position. You know, they're not going to lose in this case. You know, they could definitely draft a future star if they wanted to. And the player I'm about to tell you, this guy is the biggest project player. He's a Serbian, 7-foot Serbian big man named Aleksej Pokuševski. I don't know if I pronounced that name right, but yeah, this kid, I was watching some of his highlights as of recent, and I was researching the hell out of him. He he's a mon. He's just so good. He can pass the ball really well for a big man. He can space the floor. I think if anything he can improve on, he could definitely improve on his defensive IQ and his size. He's super slim for a big guy. You know, he's super skinny. He could add size, but for a guy who's 7 foot tall, has a 7'3" wingspan, and can pass the ball like that, I think the Celtics could use someone like that in their offense. You know, that would be a great addition. And when he plays like the Arvydas Sabonis. You know, if you guys don't know
Oh,
who if you guys don't know who Arvydas Sabonis is, that's another player you guys should go search.
it was a real
Definitely.
deal. It was the real deal back then.
A player that we didn't get to see, but yeah, he gives me that Sabonis life type. Like he's got soft touch. He can pass the ball really well. He's a fluid offensive player. You know, I think the Celtics can bank on this kid and they could develop him. And you know, it's a project player that they can toy around and experiment with in that lineup.
Very interesting take. Very interesting facts and information about him.
Thank you, Grant. Now, being the Lakers fan you are, if you were the Boston Celtics, I'm putting you in the position now. If you were Danny Ainge, who would you
You
take?
know, they have Kemba Walker as an all-star point guard. You have Jaylen Brown as a shooting guard. Jason Tatum as a dominating small forward. You have Gordon Hayward in the power forward position. Now, however, they have Daniel Tace, which he isn't a bad center. He's a great mid-range shooter. Can play great on the defensive side, especially specifically in the post area. But if I have the opportunity to get a center like Vernon Carey, I'm gonna get him. Now, this guy, first off, he's a great offensive player. Back in Duke, he's been averaging 18 points per game. He's been those are just great numbers, you know, and he's just been showing that why he could be a great offensive center in the NBA. Can put up great numbers if he can develop. However, if there's one thing that has his weakness, is his quickness. Now his quickness does lead to the lack, like it does limit his ability to defend in space on the court. And that's something that he needs to work on because if he doesn't work on his quickness, centers are going to go by through him very fast, like Joel Embiid or Marcus Gasol or, James Wiseman even, because I feel like he's going to develop really quickly. He's just an unbelievable player. And if there's a player that I could see him in is Carlos Boozer. Now, the way they handle the ball, the way they score, the way they play defense, they just play really similar. Like, I can picture Carlos Boozer in him. Like, it's just, they're both similar people who play the same way.
Great pick, man. Vernon Carey is surprising. He was actually a top 3 player in this class like a year back, you know, and he's had this major drop off ever since. But I definitely think yeah, that's a great pick, man. With that said, though, this ends the draft lottery. We definitely enjoyed doing this. We definitely did a lot of research. We put in a lot of effort. But tell us what you guys think. You know, we always like to hear what you guys think. Tell us in the comment section if you agree, disagree with any of the picks. Let us know what you guys want to see. Check out our YouTube channel. We'll be posting more up there and more new videos coming up soon. Other than that, this is Grant and Keyshawn, your co-hosts of Oopscast, signing out.
Peace out, guys. Stay safe, all right?